Have you ever heard of a necklace so powerful it could change a kingdom's fate? A necklace buried in legend, feared by some and forgotten by many. This is the story of a girl named Zina, a girl who owned nothing yet gave everything, and in return discovered everything the world had hidden from her. In the heart of the continent, where the red earth meets emerald trees and birds sing tales older than any man, lay a small, unremarkable village named Tambeko. Tambeko was not on any map. Its homes were made of clay and hope. Its people rose with the sun and slept under stars. Stars they believed whispered secrets of the ancestors. But for all its peace, Tambeko carried a shadow, a legend. Just beyond the river, hidden behind tall trees and thick mist, was the forest of whispers, a place no villager dared enter. They said it was cursed. They said the spirits of a fallen kingdom still roamed there. And they said that if you entered with greed in your heart, you would never return. Most people stayed away, but one girl had no choice. Zina was not like other children. While others played or gossiped, Zina helped her grandmother harvest cassava, cook, clean, and tend to sick goats. Her parents had died of fever when she was just 6, and since then her world had shrunk to the edges of her grandmother's wrinkled hands and the cracked floors of their hut. Yet she never complained. Zina was gentle, her eyes large and curious, held dreams she never spoke aloud. She often stood by the village's only well and stared beyond the fields, toward the distant mist where the forest began. Never go there, the elders warned. That is where the cursed kingdom fell. And yet, that forest always seemed to call to her. One dry season, crops began to fail. The river that once sang through the village now whispered in trickles. The chief declared rationing. Zina and her grandmother had even less than usual. One morning, as Zina carried her only bowl of porridge to her grandmother, she saw a group of boys teasing a limping stray dog. "Leave it alone," she cried. The boys mocked her and ran. Zina knelt beside the animal and tore her only cloth to wrap its paw. Her grandmother watched from the doorway, shaking her head. "You're too soft," she murmured, though her eyes betrayed pride. But what neither of them knew was that Zina's small act of kindness had been seen, not by a man, not by an animal, but by something else. The next evening, Zina heard something, a whisper. It wasn't wind, it was calling her name. Zina. Startled, she looked toward the forest. Must be the wind, she told herself. But the whispers returned the next day. And the next. Then came the dream. In it, she stood in the forest of whispers. The trees glowed faintly, and there, under a beam of moonlight, lay an old woman bleeding, whispering one word: help. Zina woke up sweating. Her grandmother was fast asleep. She sat up, heart pounding. Could it be just a dream? Or was it a calling? The next day, Zina gathered herbs. She told no one, and just before sunset, she stepped into the forest. The trees welcomed her like old friends. The air was thick, the silence too silent. Shadows moved like they had thoughts. She walked deeper, heart racing. Then she saw it, a figure, an old woman lying against a tree, wounded, barely breathing. The same woman from her dream. Zina knelt beside her without hesitation. The old woman looked up with piercing eyes. "You came," she rasped. Zina poured water over the wound, cleaned it with leaves and tied it with her own sash. "Why are you here?" Zina asked softly. "I was waiting," the woman whispered, "for someone like you." From her cloak, she pulled out a necklace, ornate, made of braided gold and animal teeth, and at its center, a gemstone that shimmered with shifting colors. "This belongs to you now," Zina hesitated. "I can't take that." "It's not yours because of ownership," said the woman. "It's yours because of who you are." She placed the necklace around Zina's neck. It was strangely warm, and then vanished. Gone. Zina blinked. The forest suddenly felt colder, darker. She turned to run. That night, Zina returned to her hut, breathless, silent. She told her grandmother nothing. But the next morning, something strange happened. Their cassava field, once dry, now had fresh green shoots. Then a stranger gave them a basket of fruit, saying, "My son recovered after you gave me herbs last week. You saved him." Zina was confused. She hadn't done anything recently. Another woman said, "My goat was lost for days. I saw it outside your hut this morning." And then came the whispers again, not from the forest, but from the villagers. "She's bewitched. She went into the forest. She wears a cursed charm." Zina begins to experience visions while the village turns against her. Secrets from the past begin to stir as the cursed necklace unlocks more than just memories. Zina stayed quiet. She tucked the necklace beneath her dress, hoping to avoid attention. But nothing stayed secret in Tambeko for long. Children whispered. Elders narrowed their eyes. Some women turned their backs when she walked by. Her grandmother noticed. "You did something," she said one morning, her tone calm but firm. Zina hesitated, then slowly recounted everything. The old woman, the necklace, the glowing forest. Her grandmother grew quiet. After a long pause, she said, "You should return it." "I tried," Zina said. She disappeared. For the first time in her life, her grandmother looked afraid. "Then you must be careful, my child. Not everything given is a blessing." But something had changed in Zina. That night, she dreamt again. She stood in the ruined throne room of an old palace. The walls crumbled, but the throne remained untouched. A voice echoed in the chamber, low and ancient. "The land remembers its queen." She woke up breathless, heart racing, the necklace faintly glowing beneath her dress. Later that week, a fever swept through the village. Crops withered again. A child collapsed near the well. His mother wailed, hopeless. Zina didn't think. She knelt beside the boy and touched his forehead. The necklace glowed faintly. The child stirred. Color returned to his cheeks. By morning he was walking. People were stunned. Some called her a healer. Others called her a witch. The chief summoned her. She stood before him, nervous but calm. "You went into the forest of whispers?" he asked. She nodded. He leaned forward, voice sharp. "Did you make a deal with spirits?" "No," she said, softly. "I helped someone. She gave me this." She showed the necklace. The chief flinched. "Take that off. That symbol. It's from the old kingdom. The cursed one." Zina stood her ground. "Then why does it help people?" The room fell into uneasy silence. The chief ordered her confined to her home. "Until we understand what you've brought upon us," he said. Her grandmother cried that night. But Zina wasn't afraid. She felt called. And so, when the moon was full and the village quiet, she wrapped herself in a shawl, placed the necklace over her chest, and walked toward the forest once more. The trees welcomed her. This time, she walked deeper. She didn't need to be guided. Her feet knew the way. She reached the clearing where she'd found the old woman. It was empty. But the necklace pulsed with heat. She followed its pull, past fallen logs, over tangled roots, through vines and mist, and then she saw it. Stone walls, covered in moss, cracked by time, but undeniably crafted by hands long gone. She stepped into the ruins, a shattered fountain in the center, broken columns, a throne half buried in soil, the ruins of a palace. Her eyes widened as the necklace glowed brighter, revealing faded murals on the walls, paintings of kings, queens, and a young girl with eyes like hers. She touched the image. The ground trembled. Panel on the floor shifted, revealing a narrow staircase. She descended. Below, the air was thick and cold. Cobwebs clung to her skin, but she pressed on. At the bottom, a room. In the center, an old chest, sealed with a symbol matching her necklace. It opened at her touch. Inside, scrolls, books, royal garments. And on top, a diary. The first page read, "To the last of our blood. If you are reading this, then the kingdom of Nyara lives through you." Zina fell to her knees. Tears welled in her eyes. She read through the night, stories of betrayal, of war, of a royal bloodline scattered and hidden for safety, and of a prophecy. A girl, born of ashes and raised in kindness, would return to heal the broken land. Zina shook as she closed the diary. Her whole life had been preparing her for this. She wasn't cursed. She was chosen. Zina left the ruins at dawn. The forest air was different now, less heavy, almost welcoming. Sunlight pierced the trees, painting gold across her path. The necklace no longer glowed, but she could feel its quiet strength against her chest, like a heartbeat not her own. When she reached the edge of the forest, she paused. She could see the village in the distance, roofs still sleeping under the early light. The village she had once called home, but which now regarded her with suspicion. She tucked the diary beneath her shawl and continued walking. At the outskirts, she met Nalu, the old potter, carrying water. His eyes widened at the sight of her. "Zina?" he whispered, like saying her name too loudly would summon spirits. She nodded. "They said you were taken," he muttered. "Not taken," she said softly. "I walked." He stepped aside, letting her pass without a word. Back at home, her grandmother was kneeling in prayer when she turned and saw Zina, whole, unharmed, calm. A mixture of relief and worry passed through her wrinkled face. "You came back." "I found something," Zina whispered. "Something I think was meant for me." Her grandmother's eyes found the necklace again. This time, she didn't flinch. That night, Zina lit a fire inside their hut. She read aloud from the diary, translating the ancient words as best she could. Her grandmother listened intently. The story unfolded. There had been a queen, Queen Nalaya, known for her wisdom and deep connection to the earth. She ruled with balance and kindness, but she was betrayed by her own council, who feared her strength and sought power. They cursed her name, burned her palace, and scattered her descendants. But before she fell, she entrusted her child to a forest guardian, an old woman sworn to protect the royal bloodline until the signs returned, the glowing necklace, the visions, and the rebirth of the land. Zina trembled as she closed the diary. Her grandmother stared into the flames. "You are her child's child. You carry her spirit." Zina nodded, but doubt clouded her heart. "What do I do now?" she asked. Her grandmother placed a hand over hers. "You listen to your heart, the way you always have. The same heart that healed goats and fed strangers. That is your power, not the necklace." The next day, the chief summoned the villagers. Another drought had begun. The last well was drying. Crops were failing again. He blamed it on the disturbance, on Zina. "She angered the spirits," he declared. "She brought back the curse." Zina stepped forward. "I didn't bring the curse," she said clearly. "I brought the truth." And then she told them everything. The forest, the palace, the diary. Many scoffed, Some whispered, but others, especially the older ones, remembered. They remembered the old tales of Queen Nalaya, of her necklace, of her promise to return. And then something miraculous happened. Rain. It started as a drizzle, then a downpour. The villagers gasped, some fell to their knees. Zina stood in silence, face tilted upward, eyes closed. The necklace pulsed once, then went. Still, that night no one slept. Some celebrated. Others feared her even more, but a group of elders visited her hut quietly, bringing gifts, yams, woven cloth, dried fish. One old woman wept as she touched Zina's hand. "My grandmother told me you would come back," she said. "She told me the forest would choose the kind-hearted one." Zina smiled, though a storm of questions swirled inside her. Later, by firelight, she opened the diary again and read of the hidden chamber beneath the throne. It spoke of something more. A test, a burden, a choice. The next morning, Zina returned to the forest, alone. The village was still unsure of her, torn between reverence and fear. Some elders whispered of destiny, others warned of danger. But she knew now that the necklace wasn't the end of her journey. It was only the beginning. She followed the path she remembered, past the moss-covered walls of the ruined palace, down the cracked steps into the cold chamber beneath. The air inside was different this time, charged, humming like the walls themselves were alive. She opened the diary again and traced the faded ink. Below the throne lies not just the memory of Nyara, but its heartbeat. To awaken the kingdom, one must face the trial of the spirits. Her fingers shook slightly. The diary had warned, "Only the worthy, selfless in spirit and pure in heart, may carry the flame of Nyara's return." As she pressed her palm to the carved emblem at the back of the chamber, the wall slid open, revealing a narrow stone tunnel. She stepped into the darkness. The tunnel twisted like a serpent, growing colder with each step. Then, without warning, the floor disappeared beneath her feet. Zina fell. She hit something soft, a thick mat of moss, and rolled to a stop in a circular chamber. The walls were lined with mirrors. At the center was a shallow pool, still as glass. Voice echoed, not from around her, but inside her. "Zina, you who wear the queen's seal, you who claim her blood, will you face the truths of your soul?" She nodded silently. "Then look." The pool shimmered. Images rippled across the surface. Scenes from her life, feeding a lost boy her last mango, nursing a broken-winged bird, back to life, standing alone at her parents' burial. Then the images changed. She saw herself being worshipped by villagers, draped in gold, seated on a throne, ordering people around. Her voice grew harsh, her eyes cold. She gasped, "I would never." Power whispers. Even the kind must listen carefully. Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't want power," she said. "I just want to help." The mirrors shattered, the pool went dark. Then, from the shadows, emerged three figures, wraith-like, their forms cloaked in shifting smoke. They circled her silently. Then the first spoke. "What will you sacrifice to heal the land?" Zina stood tall. "My safety. My name, my place in the world." The second spoke. "What will you protect, even when others doubt you?" She replied, "The innocent, the broken, the forgotten." The third stepped forward. "And what will you choose when your heart is torn between love and duty?" Zina hesitated. She remembered her grandmother, the soft embrace, the stories by the fire, the safety of her home. Then she remembered the villagers, the suffering, the silence in their eyes, the dried-up fields. "I will choose what saves the most souls." The spirits were silent. Then they bowed and vanished. The chamber lit up with golden light. In the center, where the pool had been, now stood a tall staff, carved from ebony, wrapped in threads of silver and bark. Zina approached. As she touched it, the necklace blazed to life. A wave of warmth surged through her body. Visions flashed, fields blooming, rivers flowing, laughter in the streets. When she opened her eyes, she was standing again at the palace ruins, the staff in her hand, and the forest was alive. Birdsong returned, the air shimmered, the curse had lifted, but her journey was far from over. Back in Tambeko, the village stirred restlessly. Word of her disappearance spread again, but this time, they didn't whisper of fear. They whispered of hope. When Zina stepped into the village carrying the staff, silence fell. The morning sun bathed her figure in golden light. Her steps were steady, but her eyes carried the weight of ancient memory. She was no longer just Zina, the goat herder's orphan. She was something more, yet still painfully human. Children gathered first, drawn by awe. Then came the elders, then the chief. "What have you become?" he asked, voice cracking, not with power but with uncertainty. Zina looked at him. Not him. With anger but clarity. "I have not become anything. I have remembered who I was meant to be." He lowered his gaze, unsure of his place now. She raised the staff, and the ground beneath them gave a gentle pulse, soft, steady, like the land itself was waking from a long sleep. Grass began to sprout. The withered crops in the nearby fields unfurled their leaves. The old well filled with water, clear and sweet. Gasps echoed. A woman fell to her knees and wept. Still, some hesitated. One man shouted, "Is this real, or is it just more tricks? We've suffered too long for fairy tales." Zina looked at him and walked forward. Without a word, she placed her hand on his shoulder. He recoiled, but then stopped. His joints, once stiff with pain, eased. His back straightened. He blinked through tears. She whispered, "It's not magic, it's memory. The land remembers what we forgot. Kindness, balance, and truth." That night, the village gathered around the fire pit. For the first time in years, there was music, laughter, cooking fires. Smoke curled into the sky with the scent of yam stew and roasted cassava. Zina sat with her grandmother in silence. "You've become more than I ever dreamed," the old woman whispered. Zina smiled gently. "You're the one who raised me with stories and patience. If I am a tree, you are the root." But peace did not last long. As word of Zina's awakening power spread, visitors arrived, merchants, wanderers, even messengers from distant regions. They came with curiosity and hunger. Some came seeking healing, others came seeking the necklace. Rumors spread. She has the power of eternal youth. She can command the rain. She has the spirit of a dead queen living inside her. Zina tried to explain. "It's not me. The land is healing because people are remembering how to live in harmony. I am only a guide, but greed listens only to gain." One night, a group of armed strangers entered Tambeko. They claimed to be from the Eastern Kingdoms, offering protection in exchange for her power. "Let us take the girl to our palace," they said. "There she will be safe, honored, and studied." Zina refused. The chief, finally siding with her, stood before them. "This village belongs to no empire. She belongs to no one." But they were not asking. That night flames rose. The strangers set fire to the far fields as a warning. Zina stood outside the village gates, the staff in hand, the necklace pulsing. And then, something she had not expected. The forest answered. From the tree line, animals emerged, not to attack but to surround her. Birds circled overhead. The trees themselves seemed to lean inward. Zina's voice rang out, not with fear, but with ancestral strength. Let it be known, this land will not be conquered. Its roots run deeper than greed, and its spirit is older than thrones. Flames died down, not with water, but with wind. A strong gust swept across the village, extinguishing the fires in a heartbeat. The strangers ran, shouting of witchcraft. The villagers stood in silence, some afraid, most amazed. Her grandmother whispered, "You carry the spirit of the land now. It lives through you." Zina lowered the staff, heart heavy. This was not the journey she had chosen, but it was the path she now walked, and somewhere, deep in the hills beyond Tambeko, something darker stirred. The awakening of Nyara was not only felt by the good, old. Enemies, long buried in myth, had also felt the pulse of returning power, and they were coming. The next few days were calm, but only on the surface. Tambeko began to change. The village paths that had been dry and cracked now blossomed with wildflowers. Goats gave birth to twins, birds nested near doorways again, and the sky carried a new clarity. It was as if the land was breathing, slowly waking from a long nightmare. Zina walked among the people not as a queen, but as a helper. She taught children how to talk to the trees, not with words, but with patience. She healed wounds with herbs and whispers. She sat with the elderly, listening to stories even older than the necklace. Still, she could feel it. Something approaching, something wrong. That night, she dreamt again. But this time, she was not in a throne room or forest. She stood on a mountaintop, and below her, the land cracked open. Shadows poured out, thick and fast, crawling across the valleys like spilled ink. The sun dimmed. The necklace grew cold. Then a face appeared in the darkness. It was not human. Eyes like burning coals. A mouth filled with teeth too sharp, too many. Voice rumbled, "The bloodline lives, and so, the curse must be completed." She woke up sweating, the necklace scorching against her chest. She ran to her grandmother's hut. "I saw him," she whispered. "Something ancient, older than the palace, older than Nyara." Her grandmother's eyes widened. "The Obumvu," she breathed. "The Shadow King." Zina's breath caught. "I thought he was a story." "Most truth begins as story," the old woman replied. The diary too had mentioned him, a being of chaos, born from the hatred of Nyara's traitors, a shadow that could only be sealed, not destroyed. And that seal, it warned, would break if Nyara's blood rose again without balance. Zina stared at the staff in her hand. What if I woke him? Her grandmother took her hand. "Then you must do what your ancestors could not. End it." The next day, she left Tambeko again, alone. She followed the river upstream, beyond the village boundaries, to the caves of the ancients, a place whispered about in firelight tales. No one had gone there in years. Some said the spirits there demanded memories as payment. Others said they devoured your name. But Zina had no fear. She had purpose. Inside, the caves shimmered with symbols. Some etched, some glowing faintly as if the rocks themselves remembered. She placed her hand on the wall. A voice echoed in her mind. "You bear the necklace. You seek to end what your mother could not." "My mother," Zina whispered. "Queen. Nalaye was not your ancestor. She was your mother." Her knees buckled. "She hid you," the voice continued. "Gave you to the forest when the throne was lost. You were born in secret, beneath a moonless sky. The necklace is not a gift, it is your inheritance." Tears streamed down Zina's cheeks. All her life she thought she was a forgotten orphan. But she was the child of a queen, the last heartbeat of Nyara. The cave shimmered again. A path opened, revealing a stone archway bathed in violet light, and beyond it, A library of spirits, floating scrolls, murmuring relics, visions frozen in glass. Zina stepped forward. She saw the final prophecy carved into the wall. When the necklace burns and the staff breaks, the blood of Nyara must choose: rise or vanish. She understood now. The necklace was the key, but the power it carried, it was incomplete. To defeat the Shadow King, she would need something else, something no queen or warrior had ever possessed. Unity, the people, the land, the forgotten. Spirits, all must rise together. She returned to Tambeko with a plan. This time she did not hide in her hut or retreat to the forest. She stood in the village square and called out, "Tomorrow we plant." The villagers gathered, confused. Plant. "What?" someone asked. Zina smiled. "Hope." All across Tambeko, she guided them, digging, sowing, singing. Children planted mango seeds. Elders blessed cassava roots. She told them, "Every root you place is a promise, a bond with the land. The Shadow King cannot take what is held by many hands." And the land responded. The ground pulsed beneath their feet. The air shimmered with life. But far away, beyond the hills, the Shadow King awoke. He rose from the pit beneath the world, his form shifting like smoke and bone, eyes burning, heart empty. He had one goal: to destroy the last of Nyara's line, and he was coming. The skies over Tambeko began to change. Clouds gathered, not the kind that brought rain, but heavy, unnatural ones. They moved too fast, too low, darkening the sun. The birds vanished. The goats bleated in fear. The air carried the scent of something ancient, something broken. Zina stood at the center of the village, the staff clutched tightly in her hand. She had felt him stirring, felt the ache in her chest when the soil trembled. The necklace glowed faintly, not with pride, but with warning. "He is near," she whispered. The villagers gathered behind her, quiet, nervous, unsure. "I don't know if we can stop him," she said aloud, "but I do know this. Fear is how. He wins. Courage is how we remember." The chief stepped beside her. "I was wrong about you," he said, his voice thick. "I thought the curse was the forest, but the curse was our forgetting." Zina gave him a nod of respect. "Then let's help the land remember." They prepared, not with swords or spears, but with unity. The children painted symbols from the ancient cave on rocks and trees. The elders sang the old songs. Farmers poured water into the soil, whispering blessings. The village became a living ritual, one of connection, of memory, of strength. And when the sun fell, the Shadow King arrived. He didn't walk, he spread, a wave of darkness oozing between trees, swallowing light. His form towered above the tallest baobabs, eyes glowing red, fingers like claws dragging across the earth. He spoke no words, but they heard him, in their minds. "Return the necklace, or all will rot." Zina stepped forward alone. Her hair whipped in the wind. Her shawl flew like wings. She raised the staff. "No," she said, voice steady. "You are not welcome here. You cannot command me, child. I don't command, I connect." The necklace burst into light. The staff began to crack, lines of silver breaking apart. She felt it weakening, the power too much to contain, but she didn't waver. All around her, villagers raised their hands, each one holding something alive: seeds, feathers, river stones, dried herbs. The memory of the land. The Shadow King screamed, a sound that bent the trees and made the earth tremble. He surged toward Zina like a wave of fire and night. She closed her eyes and let go. The staff shattered. The necklace blazed, and from every hand raised behind her, a beam of light shot forth. White, golden, emerald, violet, merging into her body. The land itself rose with her. Roots surged from the soil, wrapping around the Shadow King's limbs. Water burst from cracked rocks. The trees bent forward, their leaves glowing. Zina opened her eyes. They glowed like stars. "You are not my fear," she said. "You are my lesson." She touched the earth, and from beneath them, a great rumble rose. Ancient voices, thousands of ancestors speaking as one. "Begone!" The Shadow King screamed once more, and then he unraveled, not torn, not destroyed, but remembered. The shadows peeled back, revealing the twisted, broken spirit of a man, a former advisor of Queen Nalia, one who had let jealousy fester until it poisoned him. Zina knelt beside his form, now just a fragile figure of ash and memory. "I forgive you," she whispered. He wept and faded. The clouds cleared, the necklace cooled. The staff lay in 2 pieces, its purpose fulfilled. The villagers rushed forward, crying, laughing, singing. They lifted Zina upon their shoulders, not as a queen, not as a goddess, but as a daughter of the land. She had not fought with power, she had healed with memory. That night, Tambeko glowed brighter than it ever had. Fires danced, stories were told, and Zina sat quietly beside her grandmother, watching the stars, her hand resting on the earth. "I think," she said softly, "we've finally come home." The morning after the battle dawned, with a quiet unlike any before. No cries of hunger, no whispers of fear, only birdsong, wind, through banana leaves, and the steady beat of healing. Tambeko stood transformed, not in size or wealth, but in spirit. The village that once survived in silence now thrived in harmony. Where once there had been cracked ground and brittle hearts, there now grew green fields and new laughter, and Zina, once a nameless girl in ragged cloth, had become the living story of a kingdom reborn. She did not rebuild a palace of stone. Instead, she planted a wide garden at the heart of the village, where everyone could gather, rest, and remember. Children learned beneath the shade of mango trees. Elders carved stories into clay tablets. Travelers were welcomed, fed, and listened to. The broken staff was placed at the center of the garden, half buried in soil, flowering vines wrapped gently around it. It was no longer a weapon, but a root, a reminder. As for the necklace, it no longer glowed. Its power had faded, but Zina wore it still, not as a source of strength, but as a symbol of what had been overcome. When people asked her, "Do you still have magic?" she would smile softly and say, "Magic isn't something you keep, it's something you give." One day, a young girl, barefoot and curious, came to her as she sat weaving in the sun. "Is it true," the girl asked, "that you were a queen?" Zina looked at her, then at the village, the garden, the hills beyond. "I was a girl who remembered," she said, and that was enough. So the tale of Zina, the last daughter of Niara, passed into legend, not for her battles, but for her choices. She taught her people that strength is not in bloodlines, but in compassion, that curses are not broken by force, but by memory, and that the land, when loved rightly, will always respond. They say that on quiet nights, when the stars shine just right, you can still hear her laughter among the trees, not as a queen in gold, but as a daughter of the soil, who turned kindness into a kingdom. And thus, the story lives, on not in books or scrolls, but in the seeds planted by those who dare to believe in hope, even when darkness comes. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment Zina, so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.